It was September the 11th, 2012. At 9:40 p.m. local time, members of the Ansar al-Sharia attacked the American embassy in Benghazi. In what's said to be a spontaneous attack, it holds close symbolism to the attacks 11 years earlier. Repeated requests for more security at the diplomatic compound have blown to the wind. There were no indications of any uproar or intel on threats against the embassy. But was this just bad intel? The drone strike on a Libyan al-Qaeda leader in Pakistan was enough reason for the Libyan al-Qaeda affiliate to retaliate. The embassy would be the target, and they had the mission to leave no survivors. Welcome to the Spy Network. Let's start with some background information first. The withdrawal of the ambassador in 1972 and the closing of the embassy in 1979 after a heavy fire saw the relations between the U.S. and Libya weakened. Since the early 2000s, the two countries have been working on their relationship and things turned for the better. It was Ambassador J. Christopher Stevens who was the top deputy assigned to the embassy. It was believed that he was in Benghazi because the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, wanted the post to be permanent. It was believed that Ambassador Stevens wanted to make a symbolic gesture to the people of Benghazi to let them know that the U.S. stood behind their dream of a better democracy. In March 2011, J. Christopher Stevens was appointed as the first liaison with the Libyan opposition, reviving the relationship between the U.S. and Libya. Following the war's conclusion, both the CIA and the U.S. State Department were tasked with continuing to identify and collect weapons that had flooded the country during the conflict, particularly shoulder-fired missiles taken from Gaddafi's regime's arsenal, as well as securing Libyan chemical weapons stockpiles and assisting in the training of Libya's new intelligence service. At the time, multiple JSOC elements were formed in order to serve as analysts for the militant opposition of the Gaddafi government, and were scrambled throughout Benghazi and other parts of the country. Multiple special operations forces had boots on the ground in the same period. The attack. A CIA chief welcomes Ambassador Stevens shortly after his arrival from Tripoli on the 10th of September. During their initial briefing at 8:40 p.m., the chief tried to convey the seriousness of the terrorism threat in eastern Libya and make the ambassador aware of the situation on the ground. It was unclear as to how this would influence the day-to-day work that the ambassador was tasked with, but it was clear that the CIA had intel on the ongoing threat, and there was reason to believe that this was getting worse. On September the 11th, Ambassador Stevens was starting his day as any other. At around 8:30 p.m. local time, Stevens held his final meeting of the day with a Turkish official and led the Turkish diplomat to the main gate. Outside the perimeter, the street was peaceful, and the State Department reported no unusual activity during the day. The ambassador went to his room at 9 p.m. Meanwhile, it seems that several miles away, protesters were firing up and getting heavier by the minute. This was no surprise, as this was not any different from other days. The country was in rage for months on end. This time, however, it was different. During this period, the Americans weren't the specific target of their aggression. During the protests, it is believed that the Ansar al-Sharia was present in large numbers and were determined to target the Americans specifically. Ansar al-Sharia was formed during the Libyan civil war to topple Muammar Gaddafi. The group was affiliated with al-Qaeda and was a heavy supporter of the Sharia, a religious law and order in Libya. The group was designated a terrorist organization by the United Nations and several countries. The CIA chief had said to be aware of two men named Ahmed Abu Khattala and Sulfin bin Kamu, who were high-ranked terrorists and detainee of Guantanamo Bay. Both men would later be accused of plotting the attack on the embassy. At 9:42 p.m. local time, the armed militants attacked the American diplomatic compound in Benghazi, and the CIA contractors and diplomats heard gunfire. They immediately knew that the embassy was under attack. They stormed the embassy from multiple directions, leaving the compound in flames. The Global Response Staff, GRS, went to action and started their evacuation plan. The plan was to rush to get the ambassador and other diplomats to safety in a nearby CIA compound, after alerting the CIA base in Tripoli of the attack. The safety of the ambassador was always a top priority. Meanwhile, the CIA chief started to call friendly Libyan groups to get eyes up. referencing to the surveillance drones that were directed towards the compound. At the same time, the leader of the GRS was trying to scramble local security teams, and a JSOC element that was in the region was alerted as well. The base began their search and destroy protocol, and top officials were to be evacuated. It took the team approximately 15 to 17 minutes to get ready to leave. About 10:03 p.m., according to a congressional timeline, the CIA contractors left for the diplomatic compound. More than 40 minutes later, after parking some distance away and approaching on foot with weapons drawn, they arrived at the facility. Stevens was missing, and Sean Smith, a State Department communications expert, was found dead from smoke inhalation inside the diplomatic villa. The attackers left the vicinity. Most part of the following night was trying to figure out what happened to the ambassador. The CIA eventually learned that the Libyans had located Stevens' body and had taken it to a local hospital. The CIA chief recalled having contact with the White House and the CIA headquarters and was unsatisfied by their support, as they labeled this a violent protest instead of a terrorist attack. The following morning, 5 CIA agents, security contractors, and 2 JSOC operators landed at the Benghazi airport. They headed to the CIA compound as fast as possible. Meanwhile, a couple of GRS members took a position on the roof, patrolling the compound's vicinity and scanning the surroundings for threats. At 5:15 a.m., the CIA base came under heavy mortar and gunfire, and the operators who took position on the roof were killed on impact. GRS operator Glenn Doherty began searching for his friend, operator Tyrone Woods, during the mortar strikes. He was told to be on the roof among other operators. As Doherty took cover for more incoming mortars, a second round fell on his position, fatally wounding him. All the defenders of the compound agreed on evacuating immediately, taking the bodies of the casualties and helping the wounded. They rushed to their vehicles and moved to the airport as fast as possible. Leaving without Ambassador Stevens was a tough decision, but the only right one to make, or more casualties would follow. It was later understood that Ambassador Stevens had been found by Libyan forces hours later, laying on the floor of the compound. Unaware of his identity, he was escorted to the hospital in a private car, as there were no ambulances at the time. At the time the forces discovered the ambassador, he was alive, but severely injured and barely breathing. Several hours later, after 90 minutes of CPR, he succumbed to his injuries, with the excessive inhaling of smoke as the main cause of death. On September the 10th, 2012, at least 18 hours before the attack in Benghazi, Al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri released a video to coincide with the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks in 2001, which called for attacks on Americans in Libya in order to avenge the death of a leader of Al-Qaeda in a drone strike in Pakistan in June 2012. The Benghazi attack and claims that then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was careless in responding to the assault became a key storyline in the 2016 presidential campaign, where Clinton was the Democratic nominee. She has faced serious backlash for her actions during that period, as well as then head of the CIA David Petraeus. Bad intel, wrong decisions, or unbeknownst to the situation, you decide. To all the heroes that lost their lives in these attacks, hope you rest in peace. If you like what we're doing here, please consider subscribing. Thank you for watching, and see you all in the next video.